What is up, Notre Dame fans? It's Tyler Horka with Patrick Engel. We are here at TIAA Bank Field in Jacksonville, Florida. We just spoke to Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman, offensive lineman Jarrett Patterson, and linebacker J.D. Bertrand. Not a whole lot newsworthy out of that press conference one day before the Gator Bowl. Jason Adamalola is not going to play. That was probably the biggest newsworthy nugget out of the press conference. This would have been his last game in a Notre Dame uniform. He's out with injury. Brandon Joseph, this also might be his last game in a Notre Dame uniform. He has a decision to make about his future coming up. He's going to be a game time decision with that ankle injury that kept him out of a couple games, or one game this year. What was it, Patrick?
He missed Navy and Boston College.
So a couple games.
Returned for USC, so seemingly flared up somewhere in bowl practice. And Marcus Freeman had mentioned he's practiced in some capacity, so we'll see if he's out there. Either way, I think Xavier Watts is going to start like he did next to Brandon Joseph, but that's probably the guy you look at right there as far as like who becomes the center of what Notre Dame tries to do at safety. Even probably the case next year, no matter what Brandon Joseph does, but might have to really be the case this year if Brandon Joseph, or this game, I should say, if Joseph does not go.
I thought the most interesting stuff that came out of that press conference centered around quarterbacks, and we'll get into a couple different conversations. Let's talk about the quarterback that Notre Dame actually has on its roster and is going to start on this field behind us tomorrow. It's Tyler Buchner. We haven't seen him since September 10th. The last time we saw him, he took a pretty gruesome hit and injured his non-throwing shoulder. Patrick, what did Marcus say about Freeman today, and what are your thoughts about, or what did Freeman say about Buchner, and what are your thoughts about Buchner going into this game?
Yeah, I think it's the most interesting aspect of this game, just in that, like, I don't think whatever Buchner does, and obviously we'll touch on this in a little bit, this isn't the case given what seems like it's getting close to happening with Notre Dame and transfer portal quarterbacks. I didn't think anything that Buchner could do out here would change Notre Dame's mind on that or the need for that. He still will have only played in 3 games, and that really just wouldn't be much of a chance to prove what he is or isn't. But nonetheless, I think it's still a chance to see, like, what does he look like behind an offensive line that had a lot of growth to do in the 2 starts that he made, and with the receiver unit that's healthier, and I think a net positive or net improvement from the beginning of the year, even though you factor in a pretty quiet November and overall kind of disappointing year from Lorenzo Styles. You add in healthy Tobias Merriweather again, and he wasn't even on the field when Buchner started. Add in healthy / just new look, whatever, Deion Colzie to the unit. And yes, of course, no Michael Mayer, that factors into it. But the one thing was interesting as we saw Drew Pine go through the 10 games he did start is you're kind of thinking, like, the one thing you can't take into account is how Buchner would have looked in the improved setting that Pine benefited from, that Buchner really didn't get the chance to like use basically in the 2 games that he started. Also, not going to be playing a top 20 defense in yards per play like he did in both of those 2 starts. I know I don't want to rationalize or write off or whatever a loss to Marshall. It's Marshall, but those were the 2 best defenses in terms of yards per play that Notre Dame played this year. So, and look, South Carolina, it's still an SEC team and not a Sun Belt team, but a defense that had been pretty up and down throughout the year and inviting for Notre Dame to run on if it wants to do that. So how Buchner looks in this probably better setting against the less tougher defense than what he faced, I think is the most interesting aspect of what will take place on this field here Friday afternoon. And just kind of a chance to see, like, for him to put a good game on film and kind of reaffirm to himself and to Notre Dame's staff of, like, this is why you gave him the job in August. This is why you pushed in with him last offseason and didn't take a transfer QB to kind of be another bridge year, per se. That was what Jack Cohn was a year ago. And a guy that I think they were hoping to grow with over multiple seasons as a starter, but just never really got that chance to do, and now can't leave it up to that chance. So, but still, a chance for him to put something good on film for himself and for the staff, and really give Notre Dame a feel of what should be all right, this is a legitimate, competition here between Buchner and a transfer quarterback here that they're going to bring in.
Yeah, so you mentioned a couple things there. His play tomorrow is not going to dictate what Notre Dame is going to do in the offseason, and Marcus Freeman was asked today specifically about transfer quarterbacks. No specific names, but you guys know the names. They're
I
out
think
there.
we can put 2 and 2 together there of what seems to be heading in a direction of Notre Dame and Wake Forest transfer Sam Hartman. Yep.
Sam Hartman. To you, Patrick, Tyler Buchner, Sam Hartman, do you feel like that is going to be a true offseason quarterback? If this is an offseason competition, if this is to transpire, are those guys going to battle it out? Does Hartman come in and it's like a Jack Cohn situation where everybody knew Drew Pine wasn't going to beat out Jack Cohn, a 5-year player in an offseason competition? What does that offseason look like to you, regardless of what Tyler Buchner does on this field tomorrow?
Yeah, I think it's still something they'll let play out, and just I don't want to say just in fairness to Buchner, but logically of like, it's not like the same situation Cohn stepped into with Drew Pine, who when they took Cohn out of the portal in January of 21 was a freshman backup who it wasn't even like you would say, oh, just keep the offense functional. It was if you have to go to him at that point in 2020, it would have been kind of a sunk cost. And Buchner, a true freshman who didn't play his senior season. Instead, Sam Hartman, if indeed he ends up coming to Notre Dame, will be stepping into a room with a guy who won this job and who Notre Dame wanted to push in with a year ago. So it's a little like, I think we all knew where it was headed with Jack Cohn for the reasons I just outlined of what was in the room. And look, you're bringing in the ACC's all-time leader in touchdown passes, if indeed that's what transpires here with Notre Dame and Sam Hartman. It's really hard to envision that guy not starting. But it kind of goes back to what I talked about of like, you can really give it a feel of like, yes, we know this was Buchner was the guy that they wanted to go with and move forward with and gave the job to, but another bumpy day would be like, I don't like, what really is this? You can give it a feel of a good competition, and if Sam Hartman watches this game or whoever ends up coming here is like, all right, it watches a good game from Buchner and says, this is, I'm going to have to really bring it. And not that I wouldn't expect that if the ACC's all-time leader in touchdowns wouldn't bring it, but
right.
I think you can just get the sense of like, all right, this can really be something heated where those guys know they've got to bring their absolute best every single day and not add a little suspense to it, because like I said, it's hard to envision someone of Sam Hartman's caliber not starting if he comes here until you hear that wouldn't be the case. But nonetheless, like a chance for Buchner and to really reinvigorate what he might be and bring that into an offseason competition.
A couple things with all of that. You mentioned how there's nothing Tyler Buchner can do in this Gator Bowl to change Notre Dame's mind that, hey, we probably need to go out and get a transfer quarterback. I also think there's nothing Tyler Buchner can do, good or bad, that's going to change someone's like Sam Hartman's mind that, oh, Tyler Buchner just threw for 300, ran for another 100, whatever it may be, and 4 touchdowns, whatever it is. Sam Hartman's not going to look at that and be like, oh no, I can't go there anymore. So I think it's interesting that the best case scenario for Notre Dame is Tyler Buchner goes out there and balls, and you say, okay, we have this guy. We're probably going to bring in someone of Sam Hartman's character. We keep mentioning that name.
Right.
That's where it's trending. But I think the best thing for Notre Dame is if Buchner goes out and plays well and says, okay, this is the guy that we thought he was going to be heading into the 2022 season. We didn't get to see that for 10 games because of his injury. But that would be the best case scenario for Notre Dame. And another thing with all of this is Marcus Freeman was asked about the experience today. You have to go get someone because Drew Pine was the guy in this quarterback room that had the most experience by way of what happened to Buchner. He started 10 games. If Notre Dame goes into next season with Tyler Buchner, Steve Angeli, Kenny Minchey, you have a total of 3 starts, and on top of that, 7 snaps, and those are all from Angeli. So you need to go get someone like Hartman, anyone from the transfer portal. And I think that it's going to be talked about. Like if you're watching this game tomorrow on ESPN at 3:30, the transfer portal thing is going to come up. And just by way of whatever Buchner does out there, you're going to say, hey, Notre Dame has this guy, but they're probably going to bring in somebody else. And it just seems like through my time covering Notre Dame, it's only been 2 seasons now, the quarterback is always one of those conversations that, good or bad, everyone wants to have it. So I think that's interesting. And Patrick, we'll just wrap up with anything else you heard in that press conference that kind of struck your ears, or anything that you're looking forward to in this game outside of the Notre Dame quarterback situation.
Yeah, I'll add one thing, like you mentioned, of Freeman talking about the importance of experience.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't really the situation where you'd bring in like a guy who was a grad transfer with like in 3 seasons, but was kind of on the bench, or you know, someone who maybe has started like 2 games or has thrown 100 passes, but was like a top 100 recruit or something. Like, there are situations where you might want to bring that guy in where it's like covering for a year where you didn't get a QB in high school, or just adding bodies to the room or what have you. But like, that's not really what Notre Dame's looking for here when it's thinking about getting a transfer. You're talking about what raises the floor and what gives you a higher level of certainty than a guy coming off 3 starts and a serious shoulder injury, and a freshman who played 7 snaps this year and an incoming freshman. Like, it's a guy who's seen some things, played in some big games, started a lot of games, and that's what someone like Sam Hartman, or I know Hudson Card was a name that was kicked around, now headed to Purdue. That's what he fits. And then, yeah, I mean, it's to tie it back to the game picture to wrap it up, and talking about quarterbacks, like, what was Notre Dame's offense when Buchner was in it? No, not like necessarily the most functional thing, but you saw 2 pretty, like, at least core identities. One was Michael Mayer, and one was the QB run game with Buchner. One of those, of course, is not there in Michael Mayer. The other, though, like, how much is the QB run game part of this, and how Notre Dame wants to attack a South Carolina run defense that's been pretty vulnerable? So kind of something we didn't really see with Drew Pine running the offense, but I think you'll see a decent amount of with Buchner back in here and what he brings as a runner.
Yeah, so I think the Notre Dame offense, you mentioned Michael Mayer. Without Michael Mayer, what does that look like? What does Tyler Buchner look like? Can Notre Dame run the ball in a game you'd expect them to run the ball well? The last time they were on a football field, that didn't happen. They were supposed to run all over USC, and I know game flow kind of dictated that, but they didn't. To win this ball game, they probably need to run the ball, whether that's Buchner, whether that's Audric Estime, Logan Diggs, Chris Tyree. They need to run the ball. That's how they're going to get it done. It's going to be interesting. Like I said, 3:30 on Friday, ESPN. I'm Tyler Horka. He's Patrick Engel. For blueandgold.com, we will see you guys next time.